Hello fellow modelers, Bruce here. Well, as I do this video, it's July 30th. And if you turn back the clock about 2 weeks to July 14th through 19th, the National Convention of the NMRA, the National Model Railroad Association, was being held here in Michigan, in Novi. It's about a 40-minute ride from where we live. I was involved in that in a variety of ways. I gave some clinics. I operated trains during layout visits. And I entered 6 scratch-built pieces of rolling stock into the national contest. And I want to talk a little bit about those scratch-built pieces of rolling stock. 5 of them were HON3, narrow gauge HO scale, and this combine, which I will make sure that you can see here. Yeah, this combine is HO scale. So 6 pieces of rolling stock, and I wanted to talk a little bit about those pieces of rolling stock and the national contest. Now, I know from discussions with fellow modelers that there are many people who actually have quite negative feelings about entering models in contests for evaluation or judging, whichever way you want to put it, but I'm not one of those people. And I haven't been one of those people in a variety of hobbies that I had over the years. I was always a competitive person, I guess you would say. Before we were married, I was raising mixed breed rabbits, and when I was dating Bonnie, she would come over and she enjoyed seeing the rabbits. And after we got married, the first couple of years we were in an apartment, so no rabbits there, but as soon as we owned a house, about 2 years after being married, I started building rabbit coops. And we bought a trio, they call it, 1 male, 2 females, of satin rabbits. The breed is satin, in 2 colors, red and copper. And off we went raising pedigreed show rabbits. And within 2 years, we were starting to show them at rabbit shows in, I'd say, mid-continent, East Coast, Middle Atlantic states, up through southern New England, out through eastern Pennsylvania. And it was by listening to the rabbit judges, putting their hands on our rabbits, examining them from all areas, and commenting on their fur and their conformity and everything that was required in the standard of perfection, that we started to be able to take that information from those judges, take it to heart, and do selective breeding. And I would say by about year 4, especially with the copper satins, we were the people to beat. And at one point, we had so many ribbons, rosettes, plaques, and trophies that we were having trouble finding places to put them. Eventually my job got so involved that it wasn't fair to the rabbits anymore. I didn't have the time to spend on them, so we ended up selling them all. And as we moved from New Jersey to Michigan, I kept one and only one of the many dozens of trophies that we have. And this is the Hudson Valley Rabbit Breeders Association 1978 Best Red Satin Trophy. I don't know if you can see that writing on there or not, but yeah, we were big into showing the rabbits, and I had no problem with the competition. Fast forward a few years after we got rid of the rabbits, one of my sons gave me all the equipment to start brewing my own ales, which I did. And after a few years, I noticed that at the state fair in New Jersey, there was a home brewing contest. And so I started bringing my latest brews to that contest. And again, after a couple of years, I had an India Pale Ale that I thought really was good. I entered it, and lo and behold, I took Best in Show with that IPA. Got a very nice plaque, packed away someplace here in the house, and this big old mug from Crow's, Kroghs, restaurant and brew pub. They were the judges, and besides the plaque, I got this mug. So you can see that I've never been one to avoid head-to-head competition with my hobbies. So it shouldn't be a surprise that over the years, first of all, I worked in the achievement program of the NMRA, and which is not a contest, but your work is evaluated. And so I had many of my structures and pieces of rolling stock evaluated over the years. And again, I believe it made me a better modeler. This is the first time, however, that I brought any models to a national convention. I've attended many, but usually it was after a long airplane flight or whatever, not conducive to packing up models. So since this one was in driving distance, and since there's a better than average chance it'll be the last convention I go to, simply because we don't travel much anymore, I thought I would bring half a dozen of them. And I did quite well. So let's talk a little bit about the process of the contest judging process, I'll say. And I'll do that when I continue this video. Talk to you soon. Okay, I'm back. Thought I would take a few minutes to talk about the judging process when you enter something in an NMRA contest, whether it be at the division level, a region level, or in this case, the national level. This is the form that you would use for formal judging. This is found on the NMRA website, and there are 5 distinct categories that an evaluator will look at, whether it's a model is a structure, a piece of rolling stock, as is the case here, or motive power. Those are the 3 types of models that would use this form. The first part, or the first section, is titled construction. And they give you a little space here to describe how the model was built, the complexity and the methods used. And often that's not quite enough space. You don't want to write a book, but what I tend to do is put a sentence or 2 there and then say see attached. And I'll probably have a 3 or 4 page attachment that will include a lot of pictures that I took as I was building the structure. Lots of pictures, minimal verbiage. The evaluators don't have all the time in the world to read a book. You also check off on the top here whether it is totally scratch built, a partial scratch build, a modified kit, etc., and give them some idea of the materials. You know, you drew your own plans. You can see that's one of the options, which is kind of the norm. You know, use kit plans or whatever these are. You cut and fit wood, you cut and fit cardstock, whichever you did. And in often cases, it's more than one of those. 40 points are assigned to construction. Detail, maximum of 20 points, looks at the complexity of any details you've added to your model, and also how well they're carried off. And you want to point out which ones are commercial and which ones are scratch built. And again, typically, the higher proportion of the details that are scratch built will get you more points with a maximum of 20. Next section, section 3, is conformity. And for conformity, there's really two ways to look at it. One is this a model that conforms to something that you would find in the real world? So in my case, I had a picture of a very similar combine, and I said that that was the inspiration for the build. I did not claim that I was going to try to make an exact copy. If you say you're going to make an exact copy, then by golly, it better be an exact copy. If you say your build was inspired by it, then roughly you would expect to find a combine with some windows, a side door, steps on one side but not on the other, etc., because that's what the picture I showed. And I will show you the picture that I used when I talk more about that combine. So conformity, the other way you can get into conformity is, let's say that you design your own structure, a house, a freight house or whatever, and you design it yourself. Then it should conform to similar structures anybody would have seen, going around in their normal life, and also that the construction techniques, the building techniques, conform to accepted standards. So that's conformity, 25 points. Finish and lettering has to do with the painting and lettering, of course, and how well it's done and any weathering that you've done. If you want it to be a model of a house that was newly painted, state so. Otherwise, they will assume you were lazy and just didn't want to weather your model. 25 points for finish and lettering. And then the scratch building section. There's only 15 points there, but typically I have, of the ones I've ever entered in judging, all of them have been scratch built. Alrighty, so that's the 5 areas, and if you add up those points, you'll see there's 125 points maximum, and they will assign how many in each category. So up here in the construction, the highest number you could get there would be a 40, and I'll talk in a minute about how any evaluator, because I've done a lot of the evaluation myself, goes about figuring out what kind of points to assign. So 125 points, and everybody's goal for the most part, whether it's in a judging situation in a contest or whether you're just having a model evaluated within the achievement program, is to earn a merit award on the model when it's evaluated. The merit award comes from adding up the points from the 5 sections. And it's the same 5 sections, whether it's a contest or AP evaluation. And you have to get at least 87.5 points to get a merit award. And if you look at the fact that there is 125 points total, 87.5 points is basically 70% of that 125. So it's like getting, if you were back in school, a low C grade, but that's the number you look for to get your merit award. As it turns out, all 6 of the pieces of rolling stock that I entered did indeed exceed the 87.5, and each of them earned a merit award. Alrighty, so that's the form, that's the categories. I'll just show you briefly for this combine, all right, combine, slate run combine. I checked off that it was scratch built. I drew my own plans. I cut and fit metal. I cut and fit plastic. I cut and fit wood. And then I say see attached pages 1 and 2, but I do put down that the model was inspired by a combine that was used by the Clarion River Railroad for many years. Although that combine was the inspiration, it was not my intent to make an exact copy. Note, it is built with a removable roof. That's always a good warning to give a evaluator, because when they pick it up, you don't want them to be surprised. Let me just show you some of the attachments here. Here's a picture of the Clarion River Combine, and here's my model. So you see 3 windows on the side, you see the freight door, you see one side flat end, people door, a couple windows. So you can see that it closely resembles this. That goes to the conformity issue. I talk a little bit about the details that I've included. Arch bar trucks. When it comes to a fully scratch-built piece of rolling stock, the trucks and wheels and the couplers are exempt. Okay? So I list which are commercial details, and eventually I will say which details I scratch-built. There's my schematics, my drawings that I said I would draw. Here's some more on the details, scratch-built details. I talk about what's inside. Let's look at what's inside. Roof comes off, and it is a combine. Let me try to get this up here where you can see it. So partial seating and partial freight. I'll show you that better in the light tomorrow. And, that's the attachments. They can quickly go through this, a little bit about how I actually made the stirrup steps and the grab irons. And I actually have a video on how I do this. You've probably seen it. Finish conformity. Again, I'm using this picture to establish the conformity of my model. Finish and lettering. Under frame and roof were painted flat black, car sides painted green, interior siding was stained light brown, floor and end sills were left as weathered wood, metal parts were aged and blackened, trucks and wheels and couplers well weathered. Lettering is done with dry transfers, scratch building, entire thing scratch built. And that's the documentation. Fairly painless. I probably went a little more overboard than some people would, but there it is. Alrighty, let me close this down a minute, and I'll be back shortly to just say, how does an evaluator, an AP evaluator like I am, or a contest judge, go about establishing how many points to put in each? Whenever you establish a contest, you need the criteria that a judge or an evaluator is going to use. You want to try to get as much consistency as possible from one evaluator to another to make it fair for the person who built the model in this case. And as I think I've mentioned before in some of my videos, for about 7 years I was the education department manager for the NMRA. And both the AP program and the national contest come under the auspices of the education department. So my goal was to make sure that whoever was looking at your model would give it a very similar grade to anybody else looking at the model using the criteria of the NMRA. And to do that, we have, as a group, established a matrix that is used for motive power, cars, and structures. And it is basically a matrix. And as you look at this matrix, there's one matrix for each of the 5 categories we talked about. Construction, detail, conformity, finish and lettering, and scratch building. Since 40 points are available for the construction area, its matrix is the largest. And it's a very simple structure to this matrix. Over here, you will see that the column is labeled a simple model. and as you go across it becomes in the middle somewhat complex, moderately complex, very complex. So going across the matrix, we're dealing with the complexity of the model. What do I mean by complexity? Well, if it's structures, let's say, if you have 4 walls and a slant roof, like on a shed, that is a lot less complex than a fancy 2-story Victorian house with a mansard roof and a bay window. A peaked roof is not as complex as a peaked roof with dormers. Roofs with valleys are more complex than just a plain peaked roof, etc. And when it comes to rolling stock, I think we can all agree that building a flat car is a lot less complex than building a box car or a snow plow or some of the other types of cars that you could build. So that's going across. Going down is the quality of the workmanship. How's the fit and finish? Are there gaps showing between walls? Is there glue showing on every joint? Are the windows coated with fingerprints? All that kind of stuff. That's the quality of the workmanship. So when you enter a model, what you want to do is probably enter one that is pretty complex and that your workmanship is the best you can do, because down in this corner way down here is 40 points. So when I sit with, and there's always at least 2 evaluators or judges, sometimes 3. At the district level, I'm the AP chairman, and people will bring me models. I always get another evaluator to work with me, and the first thing we do is look over the whole thing and just get a picture of the model in our minds, and we come to an agreement of where we are on the complexity side and where we are on the just overall. You can pick out if there's glue spots all over the place, if the paint has run and left runs and so forth, if the decals are peeling. You get the idea. So, you get an idea that you have a moderately complex model and that the workmanship is, above average. So that would be like very cool. And now you see that you are in this area here where at the low end, 27 points, and at the high end, 33 points. And now you start talking to each other and you come up with a number, but the span is quite small. So that's the matrix for construction. Just to show you that here's the conformity one. Partly prototypical, largely prototypical, completely prototypical, conformity, minimal, out to extensive. And some verbiage to give you guidance as to what all that means. I know it still looks subjective, and I will agree with you that putting the same model in front of different people could generate different totals. There's no way you would ever get away from that. However, and I've tested this on many of my models when I was the education department manager. I would have a model evaluated at my district level, and it would get a score. And then I would bring it to probably a regional convention in the fall and enter the same model, different evaluators, and I would get a score. And sometimes even a third time in a different region. And I was doing that to calibrate the process. And I can tell you this. Although, and this shouldn't surprise you, let's just take construction, total of 40 points. Over those 3 different evaluations, there might be a difference of 3 points. 3 points out of 40. 4 points, maybe even. But here's what I can tell you. I have not had a model that received a merit award in one level and was denied a merit award in another. In other words, if I had the same model 3 different sets of evaluators, 3 different settings. If one of them found it to earn a merit award, they all did. That gave me a feeling of, a good feeling, that the process we had was as fair as any somewhat subjective process can be. Alrighty, enough about the judging forms and process. When we come back, I'm just going to bring you through this nice little combine and show you both inside and out some of the workmanship, but I'm going to wait for a bright sunny day to do that, so I'll be back to you again in a day or so. Talk to you then. Well, here's a reminder of what I based my model on. This is the Clarion River Railroad combine that they actually use daily to come down off the mountain and bring the kids to school, so they often called it the school bus. Okay, let's take a quick look at the model. Let's start with the underside. When you do a contest model, you always want to do at least a modicum of showing the brake cylinders, brake lines, etc. You also want to weather things like the coupler boxes, the couplers themselves, and the sides of the trucks. You can see the truss rods there and the queen posts. So that's the underside, so you have some detail down there. You described that. If you recall, this combine had passenger steps on one end to get into the side of the car. That inside has the seating for the passengers. Let me come in a little bit on it. There you go. Now I used and I cut down some seating from an old passenger car, so I didn't scratch build those. You would have gotten more credit. So a lot of the interior detail is commercial. The people, the seats, etc. I did put siding on the inside and a little box of, which I scratch built, of firewood to go with the casting of a pot-belly stove, which is here in this corner, and then some, again, commercial castings for a little bit of freight on the front end. So that's the interior, removable roof. The back side of the car, if you recall, did not have passenger steps. The steps that I made are here and under both the doors. So again, some scratch built and some commercial details on the inside. Window castings are plastic, not handmade, but the railings are handmade, the grab irons are handmade, and so that's, kind of neat. I did use scribe siding instead of individual boards, and the floor is solid wood instead of building up a floor with supports and then putting flooring on it. So you lose some points on all of those things. But again, enough to earn a merit award. And on that particular day, with the competition that was there in the scratch-built area, it took first place in the passenger car category. When you bring rolling stock, you put them into subcategories. So you have a subcategory for cabooses, passenger cars, non-revenue cars. I had a couple of those in there, and then revenue cars like box cars and gondolas, etc. So on this particular, and then it's scratch built and kit built. So those all get separated. So again, on this particular day, and this particular contest, it earned a first place plaque. All right, I'll just finish up with showing it on the tracks, running back and forth a little bit, and we'll finish up this video. There's the combine by the freight house on the Bangor Slate branch. And let's see her come back this way. There she is. And we'll just bring her back down the line again. And I'll bring her back one more time. Stopping on the bridge. Alrighty. Well, that's it for this video, folks. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you've not already done so, please subscribe to the channel. In the next few videos, I will probably show you the other 5 scratch-built cars that I had on the contest. Perhaps starting with the 2 cabooses. All right, see you then.